EU5 1.3 has been here for a couple of weeks now. We've all been playing it, and the consensus among the players is it's good, as always, and I'm enjoying it myself as well. But as in most things in life, we do have to keep looking forward, and what's forward or what's after 1.3? That's right, ladies and gentlemen, 1.4. In today's video, we're going to be talking about the little news that we have about EU5 1.4, the latest update that's going to be coming in a couple of months, and we have some very good news regarding all of that and some very cool features that I think a lot of you are going to like, because I already like them. But regarding the and more, regarding the fact what's coming after 1.4, I do have some news to share that some of you might not like that much and may be a little sad about, but it's no big deal because, hey, we're gonna get it eventually. So without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, let's jump into this latest and greatest EU5 news video to talk about EU5 1.4 and more. All right, so let's kick off of this dev diary right here that dropped just a couple of days ago right here, as you can see, July 22nd, regarding the 1.4 news and schedule. So first we're going to be talking about the and more part, and then of course after this we're going to get into the changes that we already know about 1.4, which are very good. So happy Wednesday, everyone. For today's Tinto Talk, we'll have some important news and updates to share with you. Every grand voyage needs a course, and a part of steering, honestly, is telling you when that course changes. Straight to the point, ambitions will not come with 1.4, and we want to be upfront about why that is. So if you've been keeping track with and following along with the EU5 news and stuff like that, and reading the Tinto Talks and dev diaries and stuff like that, you will know that ambitions is one of the bigger changes that is going to be coming in the future updates of EU5. And of course, it should have been, I think, around 1.5, if I'm not mistaken. And with this, it gets moved and it gets pushed back a couple of months, honestly, maybe even more than 6 months or 7 months after that. And of course, right now, you'll see why. So we've indicated before that ambitions are one of the features we're most excited about. They're conceptually designed to give nations both short and long-term goals that shape how you play and open new paths for diplomatic cooperation and conflict. However, we only get one chance to release them. A feature this essential needs to land complete, balanced, and genuinely add how you play, not go out early because it makes a change log look fuller. You've told us before, when we release things without balancing and polish they needed. We've heard that. We're choosing to give ambitions the time they deserve, so we're releasing them in the update that we're calling the Discovery Update, late 2027. I hope that is not a typo, ladies and gentlemen, because late 2027, I mean, what's that, Q4? So that's like more than a year out from now, which of course, this is the sad news that I was talking about in the intro. A feature, this is a pretty big feature. It's not really missions. We always say it's like missions when they showed us, the events you can look at in the previous update. And, this is pretty close conceptually to what missions are. But, as you can see, it's just worded differently. So this is a change that a lot of people, including myself, were looking forward to. And with this much of a delay, it definitely, dampens the mood a little bit. However, I do agree with everything else Ryagi just said right here. A feature this essential needs to land complete, balanced, and genuinely add to how you play, not go out early because it makes a change look fuller. And regarding you've told us before, when we've released things without balancing and polish they needed. And of course, a lot of people were, complaining about some of these things. But then again, a lot of them were in the, short open betas that we've had. And then, once these things land in the public release, in the version that everyone plays, a lot of people complain like, does PDX have playtesters? Did anyone even play the beta? How did this make it out to the release version? So I do agree that if you're gonna do a feature this big, which obviously could completely revamp the way EU5 is played, it does need time to get worked on. But this big of a delay, I don't know, honestly. Late 2027, that's like quite far out. But either way, let's continue reading right here. So why this future update specifically? The simple answer is we need more time to get ambitions right. But that timing is also no coincidence, because ambitions won't be arriving alone. Discovery will also feature a significant overhaul to our content delivery systems. What is that? We want to give the player more narrative, more direction, without taking away any of the deep simulations EU5 is so unique for. Alongside this content delivery system update, Discovery will also bring a rework to Colonization. Based on your feedback, many of you have pointed out a desire to see more polish, even if it means features coming a little later and Colonization being a cornerstone for the teams of EU. We also want to spend more time on this and do it right. We have a clear vision for where EU5 is heading, and the Discovery update is a major step on that journey. we're building a way to give your campaigns more structure and direction, clearer goals to pursue, and paths to follow as your nation's story unfolds. None of these are small things, nor do they exist in isolation, which is why they share a home in the Discovery update. So, regarding the whole ambitions being kind of like missions, the content delivery system, at least the way I'm understanding it, is, even an even clearer way to see what you can do and how you can interact with things, which, us being able to see all of the events and, the triggers for them and when they can fire and stuff like that is obviously a start for that, which is awesome. Great change. So, yeah, quite far ahead, but I'm not, I understand their point. But make no mistake, Discovery being big doesn't make 1.4 or 1.5 insignificant. Each of these updates is packed with bug fixes and stability work alongside improvements you've been asking for. We're going through the list, and sometimes, and if something isn't addressed right away, it's not forgotten. It's coming. So here we go, another updated screenshot of the Grand Voyage roadmap that we got a couple of months back. We got Fate of the Phoenix in 1.2, awesome. We just got 1.3 a couple of weeks ago, once again, awesome. And as we can see in the fall, which fall is, I guess, October, November, and a little bit of September and a little bit of December. Honestly, I'm expecting this October. No one's told me anything, by the way, just guessing here. Ambitions got moved out from that all the way to over here. So once again, just a recap on this, man. Along with Rio Salado right here, we'll get Across the Pillars, which is for the Iberian guys, and with the Orleans free update right here, we'll also get the Old Alliance, which is France and Scotland. This one is fall 2026. This one is winter 2027. So this one, realistically, I think February, March, probably, right? Yeah, because, February and March is still winter, obviously, Northern Hemisphere. And then after this, we got spring 2027. But as we can see, these guys, they didn't move to here. It went after this. So honestly, ambitions probably moving to, if they got another summer update, which will be 1.7, ambitions, I guess, are moving to 1.8, which we would get basically in this update, but for 2027, so 1.8. So yeah, those are some of the changes regarding this thing. Moving along further, so above is a visualization of where we stand now, 1.4 and 1.5. We'll be expanding this roadmap so you can see the full picture, Discovery update included, later in August. For me, August has just started as you're seeing this video, obviously. So in the next couple of weeks, we should know more about this right here, and that right there, and that right there, which of course is going to have ambitions, the Discovery update. So we wanted to be transparent and share these updates with you before we start diving into what's coming in update 1.4 so that everyone is on the same page. Our Grand Voyage roadmap is currently in the process of receiving an updated visualization, and we'll post that new roadmap in August, like I just said. In the meantime, we want to be clear, the old visualization showing ambitions in 1.4 is not up to date yet, obviously. So speaking of roadmap, this time around, we want to give you a preview of what Tinto Talks we have coming in August. So this is the one that we're going to be talking about very soon. Then regarding some politics and diplomacy in just a couple of days on August 5th, Catholic expeditions and content, then trade policies and economy, and UI quality of life. And for me personally, the stuff that I'm most interested in is these things right here. But of course, we do have a little bit more to look forward to before that. So to be clear, in August, we'll be covering the free, keep in mind, once again, free 1.4 changes, mostly in preparation for the open beta, which will be held not too long after the conclusion of these specific 1.4 Tinto Talks. After that point, we'll begin to cover what's coming in Across the Pillars, EU5's first Chronicle pack, which, remember, there's 3 tiers of DLCs that EU5 is going to release. The smallest tier was the one that we just had for Byzantium, where it was focused on one country. This Chronicle pack is going to focus on a couple of countries, or maybe, something like I just said, Iberian guys, I don't know, Castile, Aragon, Portugal, Granada, something like that. And then, of course, after that, we have the even bigger one, which focuses on bigger mechanics and a couple of more nations or a region or something like that. Obviously, EU5's first Chronicle pack, Across the Pillars. The Grand Voyage continues, and our 1.4 is the next destination. As always, thank you for the feedback and patience. On July 29th, we'll kick off with 1.4 Tinto Talk regarding blah, 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 and a new Egyptian plague and more, which is one of the more interesting things that I want to talk about the first, in the first official dev diary for 1.4. So there's your brief news and schedule regarding, some future stuff. Obviously, a lot of us might be sad that such a big system will be getting so much later. Like I just said, probably more than a year from now, from when you're seeing this video, but maybe they're even giving themselves a little bit of room, a little bit of leeway right here. And honestly, they were like, okay, let's do it late 2027 max. But who knows? I'm hopeful. We could get it in 1.7. Probably not in 1.6, but we could get it in 1.7, which would be pretty cool. So yeah, that about wraps it up for this part of the video for today regarding the movement of ambitions and the update to the roadmap. Now let's get into the interesting things regarding our first news for 1.4 and something very, very cool that a lot of Mamluk haters, it's me, I'm Mamluk haters, are gonna love. Alrighty, let's get right into it. A shout out Riyagi as always. Hello everyone, happy Wednesday. Today we're excited to start going into more details on update 1.4. Last week we discussed some of the scope changes we've made to 1.4, so we highly recommend that you read that short but important Tinto Talks if you haven't already. To recap, ambitions have been moved to the future so we can spend some more time, love, and testing on them, and update 1.4 is not focused on colonization, but rather a pre-1500s Iberia. So this is, 1.4 is kind of getting us ready for 1.5 when you think about it. So, our vision for update 1.4. Every EU has been a game about what you can become, but we want 1.4 to lean more into how many more ways there are to get there. For a long time, the paths to power felt somewhat accidental. You waited for the right marriage, the right heir, the right moment for a neighbor to overextend. This game rewarded patience, but it didn't always reward player initiative. In some ways, it felt as if you were simply reacting to these situations rather than forging a path, not to mention the randomness involved in that. This update aims to give the player more initiative back. Here, a system used to have one correct shape. It now flexes to better fit the story you're actually trying to tell. The player should not have to wait for the world to cooperate. We're aiming for things you can actually track and pursue more actively. We want 1.4 to improve on player agency. Maybe many of these systems take something that used to be an outcome and try to turn it into a choice with the associated trade-offs, of course, which hopefully means the 1.4 giving you the player more opportunities to find and have fun with. With that game plan in mind, 1.4 also brings a lot of various cleanups, and we want to touch on some of the small but meaningful ones today, including minor colonization changes, among other miscellaneous improvements, including pop growth, combat balance, and a new Egyptian plague. So let's take a look at that. Okay, so first of all, let's get started right here with colonial charter goals, right? You guys know that colonization is pretty, I like it way better than EU4, I'm gonna be honest, like way, way better, but it's still pretty cut and dry for a lot of the systems that EU5 has that are so complex and offer so much depth. Colonization isn't really, that deep. So, colonial charters are now created with different goals in mind. These goals can be defined by the player upon its charter creations. This means that you no longer have to make a decision via event pop-up when the charter is finished. There is a best fit preset when a colonial charter is started, but you can change it to what you prefer at any point. Form colonial nation. This will form a new colonial nation as a subject to your country. So insta, right? You know what you're already doing, not after the fact, right? After you finish colonizing, it's like, okay, do you want to create a new one? Do you want to keep it for your own country? Do you want to give it to that guy over there who borders it, or to this guy over there, or whatnot? So, this keeps it in front of what you're already doing. So, form a colonial nation. This will form a new colonial nation as a subject to your country. Join colonial nation. This allows you to select another colonial nation that is in a neighboring area or has the capital in the same region for this charter to join. This can be useful to create bigger and more feasible colonial nations. And obviously the playstyle is different. Sometimes in my colonization games that I've done, sometimes I create many, small or medium colonies. In other games, I create a giant one. It depends on your playstyle, and you guys know that I'm not a min-maxer, so I just do these off of vibes, off of role-playing and stuff like that, and this is even better and even more clear-cut, and like I said, it tells you right at the beginning, or keep as territory. This will then become an integrated or core location of your country. For example, you're doing some of the, islands near Africa right here as Portugal or Castile or something like that, right? Or you want to hold on to something in Africa directly or something like that, or maybe even stuff in the New World, right? You can do whatever you want. So this is awesome. I'm loving it. Excellent change. Yeah, why was this not a feature? Why was it an event? But honestly, even if it remained as an event, it's not that bad. But this is way better. So, expanding your existing colonial subjects for better trade to the mainland or aiming for some new overseas territory? Question mark. And now the changes to colonization. In current versions, colonies tend to suffer from a lack of direct interaction, which is something I mentioned before we start reading about the previous thing. You found a charter, watched progress inch forward, and waited until it's finished. 1.4 adds some extra content to colonial progress with indications on migration and ETAs for the next settlement. So we can take a look at this right here. We've already selected, right? We're doing an English colony of Hoka. Outcome, give to Chicago. right? So we already determined that once this is done, it's going to go towards a certain colonial country, right? And you're waiting for, it's going to be done in about 8 months. You can see the increase in population right here. You can see what these guys are lacking. The estimate follows the current flow of migration into this colony. It will change as the flow speeds up or slows down. So plenty of time to focus on other things. I'm sure nothing bad can come from ignoring colonies. We've also added milestone messages so you can feel a bit more tangible sense of progress. And now fully established and self-sustaining colonies will now be marked clearly as self-sustaining, which should be some nice quality of life to determine which subjects are self-sustaining and which are not. So you can see that these guys, they're pretty much making money. Okay, this colony, for me, it's profitable. Good thing that I made it, blah, blah, blah. Oop, it's not profitable. You need to support them with something, build buildings for them, establish them a little more. It's not just, oh, okay, now they exist, they can frick off and do their own thing, right? So clear cut how it is. So there we go, some brief little changes on colonization. Short and sweet, very nice. Now moving on to conquistadors, which a lot of people have been like, and honestly, I agree. Conquistador construction now takes place in a homeland port instead of a colonial port, so the demand doesn't cripple the colony they come from. This is actually good. You can also join conquistador wars. Doing so automatically makes you the war leader. Very nice, if you so choose. We've also added a few messages and minor UI improvements that help you better track what it is your conquistadors are actually doing. Conquistadors also come with auxiliary units to prevent them from starving to death so easily. So yeah, once again, small but sweet changes to colonization, and of course a lot more is going to be coming in future updates, right? Changes to slavery UI. Slave trades now show how much supply can actually be shipped and how much slave the source market has. Okay, this is, yeah, it just is what it is. And then we have some interesting changes regarding population here. It gets changed every update. It gets tweaked somehow, but it's fine. Don't worry about it. Population is at the very core of EU5, and while its interconnectivity with practically every other system brings with it many landmines to avoid before we can get it perfect, it's also got a lot of different ways for us to pull in terms of balance. Okay, enough fancy marketing words. Here are the changes to population coming in 1.4. Population growth now comes from actual food surplus rather than hoarded stockpiles. Okay, so this is all right, but it's just build this building instead of that building, right? That's at least how I'm getting it, right? That's at least how I'm getting it, but it's fine. It's good. Spare land no longer speeds up population growth on its own. Food surplus drives it. Okay. Population growth now slows near capacity, and overcrowded locations lose people. This is very good. Large cities and harsh winters now sharply reduce local food production, scaled by settlement size. So yeah, that makes sense as well, man. That makes sense as well. We can see the yearly population growth, prosperity, cheap food here, food surplus, stored food. So yeah, it's unnerved a little in the stored food and stuff like that, and buffed a little bit in the food surplus, which honestly, I like these changes, man. I like these changes. And added the village granary, a rural food store buildable without a town. I like that. Hospitals and medical buildings can no longer make a location totally immune to disease. Built-up resistance is now capped. Yeah, I agree with this as well. This is pretty good. And now moving on to what I think is the most interesting part of this 1.4 dev diary right here, a specific change to Egypt or the Mamluks, which is very good. Now, as you all know, man, and I think Ryagi is saying it right here as well, and I'm going to read it, then I'm going to say my thing. It's been a common thread of feedback for a while that Mamluks are a sleeping giant who never truly falls. Historically, they suffer from a variety of disasters at the time, so to represent some of this turmoil, Egypt now hosts its own endemic disease, the Egyptian plague. As you all know, man, no matter where you play in the world, the Mamluks, in the hands of the AI and in the hands of the player, they are one of the most powerful countries in the world. It's like, one of the richest, great land, excellent, control along the Nile Delta and stuff like that. It's easy to culture convert or accept a lot of the stuff that isn't your cores. Literally everyone around you is weaker. You can expand, to no limit. The only good thing about the Mamluk AI is that it barely ever expands. But the Ottomans, for example, I think there's no way for Ottoman AI to defeat Mamluk AI. You have to do, without your intervention, of course, you have to do something to the Mamluks or to the Ottomans to make them do that. And even in the hands of the player, man, once you grow big enough as the Ottomans, you push hard into the Balkans and Anatolia, you got almost all of those two regions. Even then, pushing into the Mamluks is super, super annoying because they have so many levies. They can get so many mercs. They build up a professional army pretty quickly. So not that you can't beat them, you definitely can beat them as the player. Definitely not new players, but the wars are always so annoying and such a slog, especially pushing through the Levant as the Ottomans, for example. So Mamluks definitely need a big nerf. I've been saying this for a very long time. Eventually, in EU5, I think in a couple of years, we will have a way to destroy the Mamluks as the Ottomans in 2 wars. The Paradox has always pushed back on that whole thing because, the Ottomans historically conquered, or whatever you want to call it, the Mamluks in just a war or two. And, it was in EU4 right at the beginning of EU4. Then it got removed for so many years, and it got added back so late. But I think, even these wars that, may seem unrealistic in how EU4 or even EU5 works, I think they still need to be there. So eventually, we will be able to full annex the Mamluks or make them a special type of subject, but, directly or indirectly own all of that land. But I think we're a bit out from that. So that's why we need to nerf the Mamluks. So here it is. We have the Egyptian Plague. The Egyptian Plague models the 50-plus recurrent outbreaks the Mamluk Sultanate suffered between 1348 and 1517. It spawns roughly once every few years in the Nile Delta. So it's going to be, you're not going to be able to get rid of this. Occasionally spreads into the Levant and crucially runs its own resistance track, which means Black Death survivors get no immunity. We anticipate this should severely limit the capabilities of the Mamluks and hopefully serve as a fun challenge for players who want to suffer or enjoy the offerings of the Egyptian Plague. While the aim is to keep AI Mamluks from being a powerhouse every game, this will likely require a few balance passes so that, number 1, playing Mamluks is still rewarding even with the added challenge, and number 2, Mamluks is not guaranteed to crumble every game. There should be a believable amount of both instances. So, obviously we don't want them to crumble every game, right? And to compare it to EU4 once again, what was it like? 1 out of every 10 games, the Ottomans don't conquer the Mamluks, and maybe another 1 out of those 10 games, the Mamluks actually even become more powerful and conquer the Ottomans themselves. All this without player intervention. I think it should be similar here. As long as you play far enough, I think the Ottomans should be able to push hard into the Mamluks and eventually, end up owning all of that. Because, ever since 1.3, Ottoman expansion is very good. I'm very satisfied with it. Previously, they didn't do barely anything. The nerf to Bulgaria, I think, really helped out with that. So Ottomans, I'm actually liking how the AI develops. But obviously, they still can't push into the Mamluks. And let's hope that this will, help with that. Merc changes. Okay, did they tweak the slider the other way, or did they tweak it just a little bit? Let's see. So going in first with the merc changes right here, in patches 1.2.5 and 1.3.10, mercenaries were very prevalent. And we felt, even after the nerfs to them in 1.3.11, they're still a little bit overpowered. I agree. We also wanted to give them some more uniqueness and agency attached to them, so we've made some of the following changes. Okay, let's see. Mercenaries now cost roughly twice as much to hire up front. I expected that, and 35% more in monthly upkeep. Okay, that one actually seems reasonable. So relying on them through long wars is a real financial commitment rather than a cheap substitute to a standing army. That's all I want. That's all I want. I want there to be a little period where mercenaries are pretty viable, right? Sort of, on the tail end of levies and on the beginning of professional armies, so it's not a very large period, but I think that is when they really should be the most useful. In 1.4, merc armies now consume 50% more food in the field compared to regulars, making long campaigns on higher troops a heavier supply burden. That is actually a pretty big nerf. That is actually a pretty big nerf because, as it says right here, update 1.3 already made levies consume far less supplies, so this helps to diversify the unit's logistical niches, with levies consuming the least and mercs consuming the most, and I guess pros being in the middle. Yeah, makes sense. Recruiting on rival soil now costs more as well. Mercenary companies raised in a location owned by a country you're at war with come with a hostile territory surcharge on top of the usual hiring fee, 25% by default. So yeah, that one I actually agree with. Nations can now profit from their mercenaries when a foreign power hires companies raised in their land. That country can now collect a cut of the higher fee. That's pretty good. That's pretty good, like taxing the mercs. Added a new mercenary market law unlocked in the age of Renaissance. That's pretty interesting. Okay, condottieri business. Italian states have access to unique condottieri business policy. No surcharge for anyone, not even current enemies, but a bigger cut of every foreign contract, true to the historical Italian mercenary trade. Open markets drop the hostile territory surcharge and charge every foreign recruiter a standing fee. That's pretty good. You can make a lot of money with mercs and stuff like that. Which is what, there was some niche strats with, condottieri and EU4, so I guess this is cool. Restricted markets raise their surcharge further to actively discourage rivals from poaching our manpower, and unrestricted market 1.3's default behavior. Yeah, I gotta say, I like all of these changes. This one might be a little too much, but honestly, man, I don't think there's any other way to dissuade like the AIs from hiring them. And I don't even know, honestly, if this addresses the AI specific handling of mercenaries, right? Because we as players, you know, you go to war, you hire mercs, blah, 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 you do the war. But, you know, these guys, the AIs, they just hoard so much money that I think even these changes to how expensive they are and how everything works right here, I think we're still going to be seeing merc spam even after this. I guess we'll have to see, just because the countries hoard so much money. Maybe not so much with smaller countries, but you face someone like Bohemia, I think there's going to be no difference in how many mercs they pull out their ass. But I guess we'll have to see. Okay. Moving on to some small manpower and levy changes. Firstly, we reduced the mid-late game manpower ceiling via a lower manpower max level slope, so manpower buildings cannot stack as high in levels as before. And secondly, levies, manpower, and sailors are now properly gated by control now. Low control on a location should effectively cut its military output in proportion to how little you hold there. Wait, this didn't work like that already? A free control location is unchanged, but a freshly conquered or a rebellion location at 27 control now contributes 27% of its military weight, even with a strong government modifier stack. With a floor of 10%, so occupied land never produces literally nothing. The intent is that mid-control regions should feel meaningfully weaker than before. I can't believe this didn't work like this already. What? Okay, well, I'm glad it does now. So next, about some combat changes. We reworked the Napoleonic Warfare Advanced to now give plus 5% discipline rather than allowing the researcher to ignore zone of control. Yeah, there was something like this in wait, was there something like this in EU4? Now I can't remember, but this is good. While some people enjoyed the novelty of this advance, others felt it was simply unfun and didn't fit well. Ignoring zone of control also had a tendency to slow down late games dramatically, as pathfinding multiple armies was very heavy on processing times. Cavalry was simply too strong as a standalone P? Okay, with a combat power of 4 against infantry's 1, and accounting for cavalry's smaller regiment size, 40% of an infantry regiment strength, a cavalry unit was delivering 60% more combat per battle line slot than infantry all the way through H3, which made pure cavalry doom stacks a common build. We lowered cavalry combat power from 4 to 3.25. Highly specific, but I guess, you know, based on some internal testing, this seems like a sweet spot. Though we want to keep cavalry the dominant arm right up until the Reformation, where infantry should cleanly overtake it, we've also reduced cavalry's flanking bonus from 110% and 100% down to 60% for light and heavy cavalry. Interesting. Okay, this might be a good change as well. I don't know, I guess we'll see, but yeah, maybe, you know, yeah, cavalry is too powerful right now, I guess. So, massing nothing but cavalry no longer snowballs into constant stack wipes, and a proper combined arms lines of infantry in the center with cav on the flanks becomes the stronger choice. Yeah, I've already been playing like that simply because of roleplay reasons, so yeah, pretty good. I like that. Now, minor changes to, there, actually, you can see the light cavalry over here. Minor changes to sieges right here. Artillery is now more effective in sieges. Only 2 artillery regiments per point of bonus against forts instead of 3. That's good. I like that. So a siege train wears down fortifications notably faster. Forts and 1.4 auto surrender when the garrison falls below 5% of their max, similar to EU4. It used to be below 10 defenders, which may feel correct in a medieval siege of a castle, but not real in this era. These changes are more of a small stepping stone in preparation for a more in-depth siege rework in 1.5. Very nice. Like I said, a lot of these changes that are coming to 1.4, man, they're kind of preparations for 1.5 as well. So you could look at them both like a big patch or something like that, but obviously, you know, keeping us updated until the fall or whatever is going to be pretty nice, or winter or whatever. So, improved logistics as well. Armies now draw army food from multiple sources. Highest food first. Armies draw up to 4 ranked sources per tick, most food first, then nearest, instead of draining one source to 0. That's actually pretty good. Province supply preferred over a co-located depot. Depot is reserve. A depositor can't redraw from that depot for 30 days. Supply tooltip shows each source's live food. Okay, yeah, so there we can see where they're actually getting it from. That's pretty cool as well. And as a wrap for this happy Wednesday, next week we're talking about politics and diplomacy, including inheritance contracts and a new resource, political influence. Give us your thoughts and feedback below, and we'll see you then. So yeah, lots of awesome changes right here coming to 1.4, man. Like I said, we took a look at that, you know, roadmap earlier about everything that's going to be discussed in 1.4. I was most excited about the stuff that are going to come later this month, but nonetheless, awesome minor changes right here. And obviously, man, as always, you know, like I mentioned in every one of these, dev diaries that we've done, it just keeps getting better and better. And I like it. Honestly, I like it. And I think a lot of people are liking it as well. So it's very cool. Excited for 1.4. The only thing I really don't like about these updates is that the game isn't that stable for that long. It's one of the reasons I don't do guides, because I don't want to do a guide and it's irrelevant next week. And then everyone's in the comments like, this doesn't work. Well, of course it won't work if there are major changes like that. But yeah, nevertheless, loving these patches, man, and excited for 1.4 as well. I'm really enjoying 1.3. Definitely the best it's been so far. Really, every patch is better than the last, right? Ever since the release, except for 1.0.10 or whatever that was, where everyone was mega aggro. So, it went up like this and then it dipped a little bit with that patch, but then it's just up and up for all of these patches. So yeah, excited for this, man. Let me know what your thoughts on the delaying of ambitions and the roadmap and the whole thing, and of course the changes to 1.4 that we've discussed today, especially the Egyptian plague, and what else you're excited about. But I think that about wraps it up for a brief little short and sweet news video right here. If you enjoyed this video, leave a like. Let me know in the comments below if you want to see more news videos. Subscribe if you haven't already. That's it for me for now. See you next time.